My name is Brian. I am from Gays with Kids. I want to welcome you all. Again, we're here to talk about foster adopt. So if that's what you're looking to hear about, an adoption of Foster Awareness Month, you've absolutely come to the right place. I want to thank you all for joining me, whether you're here on Zoom or on Facebook. You know, when it comes to creating families, I think most gay and queer men know they can become biological dads through something called surrogacy and IVF. And they know that they can adopt a newborn baby. But there's certainly another path to fatherhood that I found is unfortunately often overlooked or misunderstood, and that's adoption through the foster care system. And as you're about to learn, there's an incredible need for foster adopt parents. So I'm grateful to each and every one of you for joining us tonight to learn about becoming dads through foster adopt. And learn you will, because we put together a terrific program. So I'm going to start by introducing the folks joining me here tonight to present, because we've got an all-star panel here. So first I want to say hi, a warm welcome to Mary Keene, who is here today from New York City area representing You Gotta Believe. Mary, hello and welcome. It's great to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been, Brian. It's great to see you too. And I'm looking forward to tonight.
Thank you.
These events are always exciting.
Thank you, Mary. So Mary's been a foster mom to almost 24 teenagers, and you're currently the adoptive mom of some 13 people.
14, yeah.
People.
Close.
I can't even remember 14 different names. I don't know how you keep track of that. So thank you so much for joining us. So you're able to talk both from the agency side and from the parenting side.
Yeah, the whole gamut.
Thank you. So next, another warm welcome to my friend Bonnie Sharp from Extraordinary Families on the other coast in LA. Welcome, Bonnie. It's always great to see you.
Yeah, likewise, thank you. And Mary, my goodness, I'm just in awe. That's quite
just crazy. It's okay. It's okay.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I want to say hi quickly to. So first, before I leave the women. Both Mary and Bonnie are fierce advocates for foster adopt. You couldn't, and Bonnie's been on I don't know how many webinars over the last several years, and we told stories from umpteen stories from extraordinary families and from You Gotta Believe. So I want to make sure everyone knows watching that you're listening to some of the not only experts but just really passionate folks. So excited to have her here. Next, let's introduce the dads. So we're going to get to the organizations first, but then we're going to come to you guys. So Benito, do you want to raise your hand first? Benito, along with Simon, you fostered 3 kids, helping one reunify with her mom and 2 transition to other birth relatives or kinship foster care.
Yeah. Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me and allowing me to kind of tell my story here with my experience with extraordinary families in the foster to adopt system. But yes, you're correct. We've had 3 kiddos in our home, all amazing little boys, and the process and our experience has been very humbling. I use that word a lot. I'm sure Bonnie has heard me say that, but it's a very humbling experience, and I'm happy to have opened my home to the little kiddos that we have, and hopefully more in the future, in the near future. Hopefully.
Oh, but do you want to talk us quickly about that?
Yeah, so I think we have prospective little kiddos who may be joining us soon, 2 twin little boys, 1-year-old. From what we know so far, it seems like these may be more of a permanent placement. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing what path that leads us. But very exciting news, hopefully coming to us in the near future.
Well, that's exciting. You'll keep us up to date too, please. We'd love to share the news. Thank you. All right, Ben on the other coast. And Ben, are you in New York area, I presume?
Yeah, that's right. New York City over here.
New York City. I lived there for 12 years, and as soon as we can get back there, when our kids are flown the coop, we're coming right back there.
All right.
Well, it's got its own gravity, so nobody really gets away from it.
Yeah.
Correct. So, and I understand you and your husband Dan, you are the proud dads to a 13-year-old boy whom you adopted 2 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, coming up on 3 years ago. He was 11 when he moved in, and he's going to be 14 any minute. And the time really flies. He's off with his other dad at baseball practice right now. So it's Yeah, it's a rare quiet moment in the house, actually.
Ah,
That's awesome. All right, so why don't we get started? I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I'll be able to do this correctly. Actually, while I'm doing this, I'm just going to remind everybody that we want to hear your questions. So please absolutely ask them. And then when you do, you can use either the Q&A function or you can use the chat function. And either way, we won't get to them right away. We're going to change. We've saved plenty of time at the end to answer them, but we will get to them then. But I don't want you to forget about the questions. So feel free to ask them as soon as they come up. And here, phew, I figured out how to share, the screen. All right. So now let me just get to the right slide. And we're going to get started with Mary. Do you want to sort of give us an overview of foster care? And then these next several slides, Mary and Brian are going to just take us through. We want to make sure you guys understand what foster care is, what foster adopt is, and how it all works.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. So foster care is something that I didn't know about for most of my life. I sort of, it was off the radar for me. But when I found out about it, it is absolutely an enormous issue in this country that affects, here it says, over 400 children come into care every year. And now it's been shown that so often many of them should not be coming into care. Decisions are made for placement based on socioeconomic reasons. Many times the children should have stayed at home and been cared for, but stereotyping and prejudices and stuff like that, they wind up in foster care. And when they do, it can be a long process to get them back. But always, 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 the goal is to return them to their family. There may be extreme cases of abuse where that may not be the issue, but the majority of the time it's just a labeled neglect. And they do want to get the kids back to their family and they want to help the family do what they need to do. But in the meantime, there's an enormous, enormous need for where those kids will be while they're in care before they can return home. So, people like Benito stepped up. He knew, I guess, that these kids that he had were going to go home, which can be very difficult to do. I really credit people who are able to do this, but there's an enormous amount of satisfaction knowing that you're taking care of the kids, you're keeping them safe until they can return to their family. And through it, and I don't know if this was Benito's experience, but the goal is to work with the family and make sure they understand you're not trying to steal their kids. You want their kids to go home. And sometimes over the years, I've seen where our families become close to the birth family and the kids and stay connected to them. We've had some parents become godparents to these kids so that it's not necessarily a short-term relationship. They get to stay in the kid's life. And to me, that is the ideal outcome. But I have to say the truth, often that's not the case. The kids will return home and you may be cut off from any further relationship, but you still can feel good about having kept them safe while they were in care. Now, there are many of those kids in care who are not able to go home for various reasons, so they wind up becoming legally freed. The first time when you take kids who are in care, they're called at risk because the idea will be that they more than likely they will go home. But at some point, judges make a decision, they can't go home, the family's not doing what they need to do, and other reasons. So those children become legally freed. They're available for adoption. The decision has been made, they're not going home, and they need permanent, unconditional families. So if you can start like Benito did with his earlier kids, where they're at risk and they go home. But some of those kids, and as he mentioned, the new ones that he may be getting, it sounds as though they may become legally freed and he and his husband will be able to adopt them, which again is a great outcome. Ben and his husband came to You Gotta Believe, which really focuses on kids who are already legally freed. So we were able to find his son who was available from the beginning, and they were able to adopt him pretty quickly. Again, I mentioned the kids have either experienced neglect or abuse when they're removed. The average age nationally is 8. Many sibling groups, many large families come into care. And LGBTQ and kids of color are overrepresented disproportionately in care. Again, as I say, some of the factors that bring kids into care are prejudice about socioeconomic issues and things like that. So, and they may stay in care for a long time if people don't step up.
And, I like to thank you, Mary. I like to add to that, like, who better to take on these LGBTQ kids
Right.
than LGBTQ adults?
Right. Over the years, we've had enormous success with our queer population. To me, they're some of the best families we've ever had. And it's easy enough for anyone interested, certainly with us, if you're interested in a queer kid, we have lots of those who could certainly use great role models and benefit from that, in addition to just the basic love and care that they're going to get.
Great, thank you. Now we'll go to Bonnie.
Yeah, and I just also want to add to what Mary was saying, in terms of our LGBT youth in care, not only are they overrepresented, but they experience disparate outcomes. And that means they tend to remain in care longer, they're less likely to be adopted. And so again, to your point, who better than to help step up and care for these kids than, our community within LGBTQ parents. So I just want to stress that.
Absolutely, Bonnie. And I have to say, to piggyback on that, I became a parent because I found out that there were all these queer kids in care. That was my awakening. And to me, it was like a double whammy. They're also discriminated against within the system. And they don't get the same level of care that a lot of kids do. So yeah, that's an excellent point, Bonnie.
Yeah, and just to bring it home too, Mary, and what you were saying in terms of the number of children in care, there's actually every 2 minutes a child is entering foster care. So there's a really huge need for resource parents to step up and help our kids in care. But I think I'm here to talk about this slide, which is about how to get approved and how foster care services are delivered. It varies from state to state, and I'm not knowledgeable about all the different states, but I am knowledgeable about California. And so in general, travel for agencies, they're going to partner with foster family agencies like Extraordinary Families. We're a nonprofit agency, and we're providing the temporary and permanent homes for our kids in care. We're engaged in the recruiting, the training, and improving of resource parents to provide children and their families and the resource families with that ongoing professional support and advocacy for the duration of time a child is in care. But to become approved to care for children in foster care, it's a lengthy process, and I'm sure Ben and Benito can speak to this, but there's an application, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a family and home assessment, and most people it's referred to as a home study, but we call it our family assessment. And once you get through all the paperwork and you're working towards all of the training, again, it's going to vary from agency to agency and from state to state, but we have an orientation, we have a 5-week session of training. It's really important that this training encompasses trauma-informed care, so that our resource parents truly understand the effects of trauma and how to help our children heal. Remember, children come into care because of abuse or neglect, and trauma is an inherent part of foster care, and the effects of trauma can vary depending on the child, the type of trauma they experienced. It can impact their behavior, and it can be very confusing and distressing for caregivers and the children. It can impact their long-term health and well-being, but we know children are amazingly resilient, and with understanding, care, and proper support and treatment, they can and do heal and thrive. So there's a big training component in order to be approved. Typically at Extraordinary Families, we try to do everything in tandem. You're doing the paperwork and the application process while you're doing the orientation and then the training. Then comes that family assessment and home study, which includes a home inspection. A lot of families get really nervous about the home inspection. Just know that we are here to we want you to become resource
Right.
parents. We need you to become resource parents. We're not going to look for deficiencies. We're going to find ways to support you so that you can ultimately care for a child in need of a safe and loving home. And once you get through that whole assessment process, you'll be working with, here at our agency, we have a lead adoption social worker who's our family assessment worker, and she prepares your family assessment, writes out this big long report, basically making the case of why you would make amazing resource parents. And then you get approved. And we always say that's just the beginning. Your journey isn't just now starting. And you can expect to receive calls about children in need of care from the point of approval. We've had families get approved, and the very minute they've been approved, we've had children in need of care, and they were able to join those families. But it all depends. There's an ebb and flow in terms of the children in care and who needs support right away. There's number 5, the matching a child. I imagine Mary can speak to, because it sounds like you're working more with children who have already been legally freed to be adopted, which means parental rights have been terminated. Family reunification services are no longer a factor. And so they do work more closely in terms of carefully matching children with families. They're finding families for children who need adoption right away. Whereas at Extraordinary Families, we do have a matching component and a matching program for those children who are legally freed, but for the most part, foster care is the focus in providing that support to our children and their families to help them heal and ultimately reunify. That's always the primary goal. And then if reunification is not feasible or is not successful, then as Mary indicated, those children can then be legally freed and ideally be adopted by the same families who have been caring for them all along the way. So hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview. In foster care, one of the main questions folks tend to have is around money, because growing your family in all the different ways that are available, there is a financial component, but in foster care, it's really non-existent. You, in fact, will be receiving stipends, a monthly stipend to help you care for the child or children who join your home. And there may be some incidental fees, like for a live scan or a physical, a medical health exam, but ultimately it costs little to nothing to support a child in foster care and potentially become that child's forever family.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bonnie. Mary, did you have anything else to add to this slide?
No, that was a great overview. And it's the same, in New York, pretty much. As Bonnie mentioned, we do not do regular foster care. So regular foster care is placement, like, Bonnie is notified about some kids. I guess she calls Benito or her other families. And like she said, it could happen in a minute. We'll be there, with these kids. And we're working with families. As Ben came in, they wanted to be parents. They didn't want this at-risk situation. And so we work with kids who are available for adoption. And to answer a question that Quincy put in, you can come in to do foster care with the expectation or the hope, let's say not expectation, but the hope that you can adopt your kids, but you have to be prepared to also help them return home.
Yeah. One thing I always share, if I may, if your goal, I say this every time, if your goal is ultimately to adopt from foster care, you can, and you absolutely will. It just may not be that first child who joins your home.
Right.
If you commit to this process, you will one day welcome the child into your home and become that child's forever family.
Yeah.
Something else I always say whenever I join a GWK presentation, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to parents who have cared for numerous children before having that opportunity to become a forever family for a child. And they all say, hands down, they would do it all over again. They wouldn't change their path to parenthood or the children who came into their lives. And I won't speak for Benito, but I assume he might say something similar.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you adding some more thoughts to that. All right, Mary, get back to you.
So again, we've sort of touched on it, and Bonnie certainly touched on it. You're doing an enormous service to these kids. They're scared, they're frightened, they've been taken from everything they know. And it happens overnight, just instantly. They've lost everything. So they're in an enormous amount of pain. And for you to provide safety and reassurance for them when they come into your home is just, I can't tell you how important it is. We work with older kids, so we hear them talk about like the great foster homes that they had and how important it was to them to, you know, go from a really scary situation with police cars and all of that, and go into a place where they're really welcomed and they feel safe. And that, you know, it may not be the first day, they may provide challenges, they may be angry or just sad, whatever their extremes are, but just to be there and provide consistency. And a life-changing experience for you. My kids have been absolutely changed my life enormously, not just because there were so many, but each one of them has been my inspiration. They have been through so much, but they get up every day and they keep trying. They don't give up. They're just, and this is the littlest kid to the biggest kid. They just are so impressive that it's a joy to me to have had the opportunity to work with so many kids. And it does come with training. You know, when you have your own kids, you don't really get any training. You know, you got to figure it out yourself. You don't really have resources. You don't have other supports. You know, you're really out there on your own. And you've got to figure it out and look it up and so forth and so on. But this is something that comes with an enormous amount of support. I know You Got to Believe, and I'm sure Bonnie's organization as well. They're there. You have a question, you call. You have a problem, you call. What do I do? Where do I get this? How do I get them into school? How do I do this, that, and the other thing? I know You Got to Believe is there for everything. We have people assigned to every one of our families. We have young people who experience foster care assigned to our young people. So, but the wraparound services in most cases are unique and something, again, you would never get having your own child.
Great, thank you. But I think we have one more slide for you before we get on to dads.
Yeah, challenges. So adopting from foster care is not without challenges. It's definitely different from other paths to parenthood in a few very important ways. So as Mary was mentioning, the primary goal of foster care is to reunify children with their parents, and resource parents must support reunification in the child's relationship to their family. This requires a commitment to include a child as a member of your family, creating that sense of safety and belonging, whether that child remains with you for one day or lifelong. But again, if your goal is to adopt, you can and you will. It may take some time. It may not be that first child. Another challenge, as I mentioned, is that trauma. Trauma is an inherent part of foster care. And again, that's why we really take the time to make sure that our resource parents receive training around trauma and how to support children who have been impacted by trauma. And, you know, trauma, it's not just the children, their parents are also experiencing grief and loss and trauma. So it can be very challenging. But as Mary was saying, we are here as the FFA, the agency, to support you along the way. You're not alone. We're available 24/7 to provide you all the resources, support, and education you need to support a child and ensure that that child or children that you're caring for receive the services they need so that they can heal and thrive. And, you know, children tend to remain in foster care for an average of 18 months. While it is possible to adopt a baby or a young child, on average, as in a prior slide, the average age is 6 to 8 years old. So just keep that in mind for those who are legally freed for adoption right now. And there's, again, that particular need for resource parents to provide care for sibling sets and older youth. Yeah, but overall, there's no shortage of children in foster care. 100,000 plus children right now in care waiting to be adopted. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you with some questions, but now I want to make sure we give ample time to Ben and Benito to talk. So Ben, you're up first. It looks like, welcome again. Thank you so much. Do you want to talk about your experience? Sure what that was like with the folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, thank you so much for having me. it's wonderful to be part of a group of people who are talking about the many different pathways to parenthood. And I think that it's a great point of celebration that there are so many and unique different journeys that bring people to a conversation like this one. So my husband is Daniel, and he and I are both teachers, and we sort of always knew that we wanted to be parents. And, you know, being teachers in New York City, we each professionally encountered a lot of housing insecure youth and kids who had needs that really extended beyond the classroom, and it really cemented our decision that, you know, adopting from the foster care system was the right thing for our family. And it was wonderful when we got connected with You Gotta Believe, because you know, while there are many different organizations supporting youth in care, You Gotta Believe has a focus on permanency for the family connection, which just resonated with us because that's what fit our unique family circumstance and our goals. I think that Daniel and I sort of set out to become parents and to have permanency as the end goal, and so that's why working with You Gotta Believe was a wonderful experience for us, because it, you know, our journey, it matched exactly the way that slide sort of depicted. It's so interesting. It's like, oh, it really does work exactly like that, because we got connected with the organization, and we started some classes to help us skill up and really mentally and emotionally prepare for what it looks like to support young people who have had traumatic experiences, and really wrap our heads around what that looks and feels like to a young person, and the kinds of things that we could expect and practice and sort of almost role play to make sure that we were able to bring our best selves, and to have a good team between us in place to respond if there were unexpected challenges or things thrown at us along the way. We matched with Gabe. Gabe's my son, and he was 11 when we matched with him, and it was a great experience for us, because the way that You Gotta Believe sort of unfolds that experience is that as the family looking to adopt, we become aware of the young person. We get a small profile, and we sort of start to build an image in our heads about whether or not this young person is someone that we feel that we can be the right family for and provide a secure and safe and supportive home. And what I love about it is that that's something that happens without the young person's knowledge, because the risk is to continuously re-traumatize a young person who has this runway towards adoption, and there's always going to be different adoptive resources that just aren't the right fit for a particular young person. And so having the opportunity to build that image in your mind, and to commit to permanency before the young person is aware of the family resource is just, for me, a really stable way to approach it, and it really prioritizes the emotional health of the child. And so I think that is, it was really fortunate for our journey that that's the way that we were able to build our family. So Daniel and I had committed to permanency before Gabe became aware of us, and then we connected with him, and then it was all him. He, had the opportunity to decide if our family was what he wanted to join. He actually just came home from baseball practice, and he's hovering outside of the screen right now, very interested in what I'm talking about. Yeah, he's like, you're talking about me. Yeah, here you go. Hey.
Hi, Gabe.
Hiya.
After you're done.
Yeah, you can watch Star Trek after I'm done. Okay. So no, there's not going to be time. You got bed. So yeah, he's just home from baseball practice, so he's here to say hello. But he knows that I think the world of him, and he tells me to shut up, Dad, because he thinks that I compliment him too much. I think he's just a really resilient little guy. So it really, it was like this great story for us because we connected with Gabe, and he he had some visits with us, and we took him mini golfing, and then we built up to an overnight, and he was moving from a nearby state, so we had like visits back and forth, and then it was kind of really an intense experience all around because we would be, Zooming with him, and then he'd be coming on the weekends, and very, very quickly he started to attach to us, and we were very attached to him, of course. And so then, of course, you've got this kid who's in tears. He's like, no, like I just want to stay. I don't want to go back. And so you have to sort of emotionally prepare for this roller coaster of building a family in many ways that parallels sort of welcoming a newborn baby into the family. It just turns everything upside down, and you get to really know yourself. I think you sort of discover what your own limits are in a way that you might not have known before, and where you're just going to hit that boundary of patience or tolerance or whatever it might be, in a good way, because every parent's got to sort of define how they're going to raise their kid, and years on, it's a constantly evolving and wonderful journey for us. And I think just being able to sort of day by day build that goal of expanding our family, and supporting Gabe to grow and achieve his great potential has been it's this wonderful part of my life. So I'm really grateful to be able to share it.
We're really grateful for you to have just shared that. Thank you so much. Incredible story, and very well shared. We're going to come back to you with some questions, but first, last but certainly not least, let's turn to Benito. So Benito, thank you for joining us as well. Do you want to share your story? And Ben, I'm glad you explained how you got interested in foster adoption. So Benito, if you could do that as well when you're providing your thoughts.
Yeah, my husband Simon and I, since we were married, had always talked about having kids. And so we actually utilized Gays with Kids and your resources and kind of finding our path and our journey on where we wanted to go. And so we went to private adoption, and we thought about surrogacy, and we thought about foster to adopt, and then we kind of went through and recycled through all the different modes of building our family again. But my path, our path, is a little bit personal to me. Both my parents passed away when I was an infant, and so I know that my childhood and my experience could be like many of the other kiddos that are out there within the foster care system. And there are so many kids out there who need a solid, safe, steady home, and to be cared for and loved until either they become our permanent kids and can stay with us, or until they reunify, like Bonnie and like Mary explained. And so we looked, once we decided that foster care was going to be our path, we looked at various different agencies in the LA area and also Orange County, but we kept going back to Extraordinary Families. And one of the reasons why was because there was support for the LGBTQ community. I also had two coworkers who have used them as well to build their family. And so we heard nothing but rave reviews about them. And so we decided to eventually take the plunge and start the process. Now, my husband and I, we had kind of went back and forth, and there was always an excuse of why not to jump in. We wanted to pay off debt. We wanted to pay off our cars. And talking to coworkers and talking to family, we realized we were never going to be ready, right? There was always going to be something that was holding us back. And so eventually during the pandemic, just about a year ago, we started this amazing journey to become foster parents. And so our path followed just about what Bonnie explained, as far as going through the training, taking the pride classes, preparing our home. We needed to move into a bigger home because we want to accept two kids into our life. And so we had to move into a bigger house so we could support that. And so it was a little bit of a journey until we finished our home assessment and started taking calls. My husband and I actually took our very first call that we got. And with that, sometimes you don't have a lot of information. So you need to be ready to make a really quick decision with limited information that you're getting for these kiddos that could potentially come into your home. And so a lot of times the information that you get will be their age, their race or their ethnicity, and then maybe a little bit of the information of why they are coming into the system. And so for our first call, we were eager beavers and ready to jump right in. And so we said yes right away. And we were able to welcome a 6-month-old little boy into our house, who we had the pleasure of caring for just about 8 months, 7, 8 months. And much like Mary said, it is a partnership. And we partnered with our kiddos' mom and dad through their journey as well and through our journey. We were learning to be parents. They were doing things that they needed to do to reunify and welcome our little kiddo back into their home, which is the ultimate goal for reunification. And it was an experience. He eventually went back to live with his mom. And I'm not going to lie if I will say that there was not a little bit of loss and heartache for my husband and I. We needed some additional support, which Extraordinary Families was very gracious to have us talk through different support groups and through different social workers about our experience and our grief and our loss that we were going through. Like Mary said, we still continue to this day to have contact with our little kiddo that is now living with his mom. We were just at the park a couple of weeks ago and had a great visit, and we are gunkles for life. So not dads for this little one, but we are gunkles, and we're super happy to be able to still be in his life and his mom and his dad's life. And we're excited to see where his path takes him. We know that he is safe and secure now, and we have a lot of solace and resolution with that and with the process that we went through, knowing that he is now with his mom and she loves him and is caring for him. Since then, we took a little bit of a break to kind of get our bearings back together and process our feelings. And then we jumped back into it, and right away, we had a call for 2 little boys, 6 months and a year, or 2 years old. That experience was a little bit different because there were some hiccups that kind of came into the process legally. And then there were 2 little girls who may come into the picture. And so we went kind of back and forth with 2 sets of kiddos that we were going to welcome into our home. But eventually these 2 little boys came to join us. We kind of knew that their situation was going to be a little bit differently because the social workers were very upfront, letting us know that there were some family members that were open to taking the kiddos also. And so we had them just for about a month, and they have since reunified or gone to live now with a cousin. We know that their path is going to be different than our first kiddo's path. And now we're taking another break, kind of processing some things now. But like you mentioned, Brian, there is the possibility of 2 one-year-old twin boys joining us in the next couple of weeks who may be our forever kiddos. And so we know that there may be a lot of things that come up in the future with that. But my husband and I are open to welcoming as many kiddos into our home as we need to until we ultimately get to what our hopeful outcome is, which would be through foster to adopt. We know that there are many kiddos out there who need homes, and we're happy to welcome as many as we can into our home until our path plays out to hopefully where we want it to be.
Wow. I need a couple of minutes to process now, but sure, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really wonderful. I just want to remind everyone to ask if you have any questions, use the chat or the Q&A function. And if you're on Facebook, feel free to leave comments there. We've got someone monitoring. We did have a couple of questions that came to us in advance, but before I get to them, I just want to ask the dads a question too. So first of all, Benita, you just say it took some time in between, and I'm curious more, what was that like? how much time do you take? And how does it affect your relationship when you're in between and you're saying goodbye to kids, et cetera?
Yeah, it was difficult. You have these kiddos that come into your home, and from day one, there was an instant connection for both my husband and I. And so there was a little bit of loss when he went back to live with his mom. And, my husband and I had some very long nights and some very deep conversations about our future and if this was something that we wanted to continue. And we wrestled with that decision. Extraordinary Families provided some amazing support to us. And so we were able to talk through our feelings with the social worker. They also have a larger support group of other foster families as well, who we were able to share our experience. And we knew we weren't alone. We weren't alone in our feelings. Our feelings were valid. And we processed that. We went on a nice long vacation out of the country to take some time off and really kind of recenter ourselves and prepare ourselves for future kiddos that were going to come into our home. We knew right away if we were going to accept kiddos, we wouldn't be in the mental or emotional state to do that at the time, to fully commit. And so we needed to take that time off to decompress and cope and process our feelings. And now we're ready for more kiddos.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Ben, I'm curious, you talked a little bit about, you find out about Gabe's profile and you get to read about him and learn a little bit about him, but just really take us through, what's it like the first time you're meeting him and where does that happen? And how long?
Oh yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Let's take me back. Okay. So, so to get specific, we're working with somebody who from You Gotta Believe, and every now and then she would send us a little profile of a kid with like a really sort of just a bit of information to try and establish, like, could this be a kid that would be a good fit for your home? And so you sort of look at it and you find out what the level of need is and what that constellation of need looks like, and you look at where your strengths are as a family, and if it's a yes, then you just say like, yep, it'd be great to learn more about that kid, or that kid is not the one that's that we don't have the strength that we would need to be able to provide support for that child. So I think we got quite a number of sort of little profiles sent over to us, and we were like, yep, great, yep, sibling group, yep. We were like very we had a whole range of different things that we thought would work well for us. And so it was funny, we really wanted to adopt like a sibling group, but it's funny, you don't know your kid until you meet your kid. So once you said yes to a child, then on the child side, they have a social worker. They have a whole team of people who are looking to try and make a great match for that child. And so they don't necessarily think that your family is going to be the right fit for that child, right? And we know nothing about that side of things. So it's only when we say, yep, we want to learn more, and on their side they said, yep, we want to learn more, then you get together. In our case, it was on Zoom. You do a full disclosure meeting, right, with all of the support people who have been involved in that child's life, so that you can get a sense of, what's their whole history. They tell you all of the information you want to know. The child doesn't know you exist. So you're learning everything from the day they were born and all the way up until now, like everything that's ever happened to them. And then that's the point at which you say, yeah, I'm going to adopt this child. If they'll have me, then I'm going to adopt them. And so for You Gotta Believe, that's the moment at which you emotionally adopt them and you commit. So for us, we had a full disclosure meeting for Gabe, and we committed to him. And then on his side, his worker took a little book about us and was like, hey, this could be your family. What do you think? And it's all on him because he's old. He's on the older side, so he's got a stake in this. He can really form a judgment about that. So he was like, "Hey, definitely. Like, I'm going to be in August. This sounds great." And so they put him on Zoom with us, and he was so shy. And he was like, and then they had helped him to come up with a whole bunch of questions beforehand, so that he had something to say. So they sat with him, and they had that nice little meeting, and it was incredibly stressful because you want them to like you and think you're cool, and like suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I was going to be nervous about this. And but on both sides, I think it's just this really, really lovely moment where you get to sort of put forward your own vision for what the family will look like that you're going to come together and create together as co-participants in this little journey. So having done that, we had like a quick sort of Zoom thing with him and his social worker so that he could get a good look at us. And then that weekend we went up and we visited him in the home that he was living in, and we took him out for some ice cream, and we got him some clothes because he was gonna graduate from elementary school. And so we found out that he hates clothes shopping, and we thought that was right on brand for an 11-year-old. So, and then from there it was just a matter of he'd be asking us, when are you coming back? What's next? What are we gonna do? Like, can we speed this up? And it was a really nice moment in his life because we got to go to his elementary school graduation and meet his teachers and sort of start to integrate with the life that he had in place. And of course, being adopted into our family and creating this family together meant that for him, he was being uprooted and moving to another state. So he was in driving distance, but it was a long way. And so those moments of meeting were also moments of sort of wrapping your head around what his reality looks like, and having a lot of empathy for the fact that this act of adoption is actually one that's going to destroy a lot of the things that he has become comfortable with. And then sort of very gently and with a great deal of understanding, sort of helping him to find those moments of comfort in this new idea of what life will look like. The move to New York City is pretty even for me. I came to New York as an adult, and it was a very abrupt and eye-opening change. And I'll always remember, like, the first time that Gabe was coming to New York City, we were like going over a bridge, and he's like seeing this cityscape, and he's just like, wait, what? That's the city? Are you kidding me? You've never seen any city so large as that before. And for me, my experience of meeting Gabe for the first time was very much like his experience of seeing the city for the first time, because here you have, like, right in front of you, this very, like, awakening reality of what life is going to look like from now on, and how it's going to really change and shift in ways that you weren't necessarily always prepared for or expecting, but always sort of really open to, and bringing a lot of celebration to every new learning opportunity there.
That was great. So I was going to joke around and say, oh, you're not from New York City?
Hey, mate, what are you saying? I'm a native New Yorker. I've been working on this for years.
I got a couple more questions, but before we do, I would be remiss if I didn't share my last screen. So let me just do that first, please, and just go over this quickly. So anyone that comes here, we don't want you left hanging. We want you to know that if you're interested in foster or adopt, we're here to help you out. The best way we do that is we have something called GWK Academy. GWK Academy is our platform, our app, to help you become dads. So the easiest way to do it is you go down and you download GWK Academy from your favorite app store, and you upgrade to our free course. It's called the Intro to GWK Academy. And then you'll learn about all the paths of fatherhood. But once you're ready to dive into foster adopt, we just ask you to enroll in our adoption foster adopt path. And the very next thing we're going to ask you to do is schedule a call with me, so I can take you through exactly how GWK Academy and our foster adopt course works, take you through in addition to take you through step-by-step everything you'll need to know in more detail than we did here. We also will match you with mentors. These are dads who've gone through foster adopt recently. And we can also connect you with wonderful family building partners like You Got to Believe in Extraordinary Families. And speaking of that, so Bonnie and Mary, what do people do who don't live in LA or who don't live in NYC. So A, what they do if they want, if they're interested in supporting some of these LGBTQ kids that you guys have mentioned, and B, what if they just want to make sure that they're working with an agency that is, you know, as LGBTQ friendly and passionate as you guys are.
Yeah, I mean, my first suggestion would be to check out the HRC ACAF, the All Children, All Families project website, because they have a list of all the agencies who
Mhm.
have been working with HRC Human Rights Campaign, their All Children, All Families program, to ensure that the programs and the services that they offer are inclusive and affirming. And we've been partnering with this program or project, I think, since 2009. We were amongst one of the first agencies to be recognized as a leader in supporting the LGBT community. So I would definitely recommend checking out that website, because they definitely have a lot of different agencies listed by region, where you might be able to find an agency that would be inclusive and affirming. And you can always reach out to me directly and I can provide some support for you. We serve all of LA County, but I can also help connect you to some sister agencies.
Great, thank you. And Mary,
No, I was going to say, yeah, Bonnie got that. That the HRC is a great place to start. We also were certified by them years ago when they started the program.
and we
So-
actually, sorry, go ahead.
Now in the rest of the country, it's hard to say what kind of reception you're going to have, frankly. I mean, we're talking New York and California,
Yeah.
and so you're fine. And I know certainly there are places that are challenging.
But Mary, where do you guys work out of? Are just New York as well?
We work New York. We're New York and, you know, sort of Westchester, Rockland, Long Island, all of Long Island is really where most of our families are based. We get kids, as Ben's son came from outside of the city, but we really license and support people within the city right now.
Okay, great. Ben, thank you so much for responding to the email. So I'll say, All Children, All Families, we're going to send an email to everybody following this with the webinar. That way you can either watch it again or share it with anyone else you know who'd like to look at it. And we'll also provide contact details of folks. So Mary will probably give Rachel's contact details.
Sure.
So, so yes. So, all right. One last, I guess it's about 9 o'clock. So why don't I go around one more time? Thank everybody for joining us, and let us know one other thing you'd like to leave behind, you'd like to share with us before we circle off. So we'll do the dads first. Benito, any last words?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about whenever I was speaking is, you know, I want to make sure that I'm transparent in kind of everything that you go through as a foster family. And you have amazing resources by the state, by the agency, and amazing support, but it is a commitment, and there is a time commitment piece to it, to make sure that you're supporting the family and the visitations with the family, and all of the visitations that you have coming into your home, from the social workers to investigators. But, you know, that was one of the things that my husband and I kind of wrestled with. And if you're ready to become a dad through the foster care system, through foster to adopt, you will make it work. You will build your own support system, whether it be your family, your friends, your agency that you're working with, to make sure that you are doing everything that you need to do to support the kids and hopefully have the outcome that you want through the foster care system. So these thoughts that you have about the stress and the anxiety and everything that goes into it, those are real. But know that if this is truly your path and what you want to do to adopt through the foster care system, you will find a way to make it happen.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we wish you all the best with whatever comes down your road next.
Thank you. Thank you.
And hopefully you'll share your stories with us. All right. Thanks, Ben.
Right. I guess I would just point to, you know, it's a big commitment, and it's an upheaving sort of experience to go through. And right from the beginning, I think that it's so important to embrace the fact that once you have made the commitment, it is permanent. It's irrevocable, in the same way that if you were to bring a new baby into the world, if you adopt a child, then there's no going back, and there's really nothing you know, in the same way that we sort of emotionally understand if there's a child who's your biological child, you can't just give them away. You know, it's the same. And I think that really knowing that and living that every day is an important component, because, you know, if that's not deep in your soul, then maybe there's a bit more sort of searching that to be done before you you know, move forward with a child and bring them into your family.
Yeah. And, you know, one question I get is, you know, is it the same as a biological child? And when I tell people I'm the dad of the biological dad to twins, and I share that only because I'm also HIV positive. So I want anyone who's watching who's HIV positive know that they can become dads either through adoption or biologically through surrogacy. And our first child came to us through adoption. We found out about him when he was 3 days old. I could not possibly love any of my kids any more than I already do. And they're exactly the same. They're all the same. And my husband's not the biological father of any of the kids. And he couldn't possibly love any of them more. Like there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. Mary, how about you? Any last words?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say, do not let the barriers stop you. If you want to be a parent, you know that's in your heart, and all you got to keep focused on the fact that there's a child at the end of the line that needs you. And particularly being queer, again, outside of New York and California and a few other places, you're going to hit barriers. I get people writing to me all the time. The other day, a trans family that had written to me over a year ago and were struggling out in the Midwest somewhere. And I encouraged them the same thing. Don't let anything stop you. They just wrote to me. They just got licensed. So, you know, just don't give up. To fight, do whatever you have to do. Fight politely, you know, but fight. And you know, if this, as I said, this is in your heart. And Benito talked about, you know, all the doubts that we bring up. I did the same thing, you know, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. That's rubbish. That's just fear speaking. Just take the plunge. You know, that's what we say in the Buddhist world. Just take the plunge and do it. You know, you're meant to do it, and you will not regret it. My life could not be richer than it is.
Now I understand where all your calm and energy that you exude comes from.
You need that to have as many kids as I do, but you don't need that, you know, for 1 or 2 or 3. You know, I think they're like potato chips, though. They're just so adorable, and they just teach you so much. They make you a better person.
That's great. Bonnie, any last words from you?
Yeah, I mean, as I shared, you're parenting all along the way, even if this child is not going to be your forever child, you know, as in Benito's case, Benito and Simon. If your goal is to be a parent, if you are fostering and supporting a child in foster care, you are parenting all along the way. And you're just making that lasting impact on that child, on their family. I love hearing Simon Benito's story, their experience. I feel like this sense of pride in this resource family that we have been, you know, have this opportunity and the honor to work alongside, who have just very beautifully supported the 3 children who came into their care, and have been able to maintain that connection with the first child who was joining their home and his mother. That's what we hope. We hope that we're able to create these big extended families, and children can never have too much love.
That's great. That's what I always say. I can't have enough people in my kids' lives to love them. So I agree. And so Benito, amazing. And I love that you said you're open to more, just bring it on. It's pretty impressive. I want to thank you all for coming and for joining and for sharing us. This has been a really wonderful webinar for me. I know it's very heartfelt for me. I'm sure for everyone else who is watching. Thanks for you all for doing the work that you're doing. For those who are watching, thank you so much for sticking around. As I said, we're going to send a follow-up email. If you have any questions for anyone, you can send it via me, dads@engagewithkids.com. Hopefully it's an easy email address for you to remember. And until the next time, thanks for joining.
You know,
Eva?
Brian, one last thing. I realized I forgot to address transracial parenting. So if anybody has any questions, because that's a huge component of the
Yeah.
foster care
Yeah.
system and the process. So if anybody has any questions related to transracial, transcultural parenting, please feel free to reach out to me.
But I definitely want us actually to do something on that in the future.
Yes, that
As
would
a,
be great.
as a dad raising a transracial family, I'm extremely interested in that. So
Yeah.
I thank you all. Once
Thank
again,
you,
bye.
Brian. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank
Great to
you.
meet Benito and
Thank you.
Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Benita. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Brian.